Dr. Judson Brandeis literally wrote the book on men's health. We couldn't get enough of this conversation. Doesn't it feel like sometimes men are left out of the health and wellness conversation? Which feels upside down in some ways since so much of health and medicine research is done on men and excludes women. But it does feel like, in terms of aging and chronic health conditions, men are kind of left to suck it up on their own. Not anymore. It's time to bring men's health into the spotlight. Dr. Brandeis is a wealth of knowledge, and we barely scratched the surface. Fortunately, he published a 900-page book on the topic, The 21st Century Man. So let's dig into this important and necessary conversation with Dr. Judson Brandeis. Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
All right, Dr. Brandeis, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Hey, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
We are excited to have you on. As we were saying before we recorded, we speak to way too many people who specialize in women. Not that women aren't important, but it's ubiquitous in the health coaching space and not nearly enough men who specialize in talking about things that other people are uncomfortable talking about. Sexual health for men, testosterone, and so on. We can go in a million different directions. But first, please introduce yourself, if you don't mind. Give us your backstory in terms of kind of who you are and what led you to where you are.
Sure. So I'm a board certified urologist, and I practice in Northern California. I trained at Brown University, Vanderbilt for medical school. I did a year of Howard Hughes sponsored research in transplantation immunology at Harvard Medical School, and I trained in surgery and urology at UCLA. I've been in practice for over 20 years. I've received the top urologist in the Bay Area for the past 10 years. I've been chief of urology at my hospital, at my local HMO. And about 5 years ago, I really focused in on men's health, men's sexual health, men's hormonal health. I wrote a book called The 21st Century Man, which is the most comprehensive men's health book ever written. It's over 900 pages and 101 chapters. I have a men's health supplement line called Affirm Science. I have a nitric oxide booster. I have a testosterone boosting supplement called Support. I have a premature ejaculation supplement called Prelong. I have a prostate health supplement called Spunk. I do clinical research. I have the world's first safe, effective penile enhancement protocol called Pelong. So I'm a busy guy. I've done a lot of stuff.
Sounds like it.
You are a busy guy. You have done a lot of stuff, and I feel like you've done a lot of stuff that nobody else is doing. I just feel like well, probably because I'm a woman, maybe, but all this stuff, like what a vast realm men's health is, really.
It really is, and it's very underutilized. Guys think that they know everything.
Yeah.
It's just like, why do guys not ask for directions? I guess before GPS.
Like, here's the thing. We talk about, like, Erin and I specialize in women because we're women, right? But we also know, like, in my opinion, when working with both women, I used to own a gym too. So I worked with both men and women. And for me, in my own myopic view, especially when it just came to like weight loss or muscle gain, men were a lot easier. Women were far more complicated from a hormonal perspective and how these systems all work. And I think I kind of took that for granted a little bit, but that's also like one lane. There's so much more. And so I'm excited to just really understand the intricacies of the hormonal health for men and all of the different sort of triggers, avenues, or pathways that play a role here. Because I do think for years, I just sort of always assumed men were easier than women. And I think I probably did my clients a disservice. Not that they didn't get results, they did, but I had one lane and I didn't know enough to sort of open my mind more.
Well, I think one of the keys to working with men that I've discovered is men respond to numbers, to analytics. So I have an in-body body composition scanner in my office, and I present that to patients. And guys will always puff up their chest, look at themselves in the mirror and think that they look like they were when they're 20 years old. But when you present someone their analytics, like I get a lot of guys with beach bodies. So, big arms, big chest, but their legs are really thin.
Yeah.
And I said, dude, you got chicken legs. If you never do a bicep curl or a tricep, for the rest of your life, you'll be fine. You have to do squats, you have to do leg lifts, you have to run, you have to get on a spinner bike. Those are the kind of things that you need to do. And people look at me like, oh, well, okay, I haven't had a leg day in 10 years. But I guess I need to start. And I tell guys, I see a lot of men, 50 plus, and I tell them, listen, you need to spend the rest of your life looking like a T-Rex, because leg strength is much more important as you get older than arm strength. Leg strength is going to get you up the stairs. Leg strength is going to help you travel. Leg strength is going to help you play with your grandkids. Upper body strength, it was great back in the day, but you have to change your mindset. And that's the thing, is numbers can change people's mindsets.
Mm-hmm.
Right. First of all, I think it's very funny. I'm visualizing a guy going to the doctor and the doctor's like, you've got chicken legs, like as though it's an official diagnosis.
Yeah.
Here's your prescription.
You can find that in ICD-10. Yeah, chicken legs. It's 723.9.
But
submit that to the insurance company.
I know. It's just kind of funny visual, but I was thinking through this, like, to your point, as we age, like, first of all, as we age, nobody I guess that's not sexy for people, but it gets to a certain point in life where it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to be old soon. As we age, leg strength is more important than arm strength. But also, I mean, I'm just curious because, like, hormonally, legs have greater, there's just greater muscle mass in the lower body. And right, we know, like, from the metabolic perspective, training the leg muscles makes you like more insulin sensitive than upper body muscle would. But like, muscle is kind of an endocrine organ. We're learning that. Does it have an influence then on testosterone production? If you're walking around with chicken legs and you're not utilizing the biggest muscles in your body, is this having any kind of impact on hormones for men?
Well, I mean, testosterone is kind of interesting. So if you look at, as a society, our testosterone levels have declined about 30% over the past 50 years. And the reason for that is pretty simple. Your body will only make as much as it needs, right? So if you're a hunter out on the plains killing buffalo, you need a lot of testosterone. If you're a farmer, raising crops and tending the land, you need a lot of testosterone, but not quite as much as a hunter. And if you're a desk jockey, you're sitting at a desk all day in front of a computer, your body's like, we don't need that much testosterone. No one's attacking us. We don't have to kill something to eat. And so your body just won't make that much testosterone.
Yeah. That's right. Hormonal health, right, Aaron? This whole like ancestral, like what's the function of the body, and the body's smart.
Right. It is so. So are you saying that testosterone production is like demand driven, but is the demand based on like survival pressure, evolutionary pressure? Is that what
well, it's how much you need it. So
okay.
If what they find is that if people exercise more, if they build more muscle, that they get themselves into shape more, the body will respond by increasing testosterone levels.
Got you.
Another really critical thing that a lot of us don't get enough of, but is essential for testosterone replacement, is sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Right. So testosterone peaks in the morning, and then it slowly declines until about 3 or 4 o'clock when it begins to bottom out. And then if you look at, the graph of testosterone hour by hour, when you start to sleep, it begins to regenerate. It's like my electric car, right? I use it during the day, the battery gets drained, and then I plug it in at night and it takes 8 hours to recharge. Well, if I only plug it in for 4 hours, then it won't fully recharge. And if every night I plug it in for 4 hours, eventually it's not going to work anymore. And that's pretty much the way that testosterone works.
Gosh, that analogy is like
Mm-hmm.
so perfect. I'm learning a lot already. I know nothing about testosterone. Obviously, I don't want to say obviously. I don't want to keep saying obviously. It feels like a major gap in my understanding of of human health that I don't understand enough about testosterone.
Well, it's essential for understanding how to train men.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're a man and your testosterone is 200 or 250 or even 300, and you go to the gym, it doesn't matter what you do. you're not going to build muscle. Think of it. If you're 12 years old, pre-puberty, right? You're this scrawny little kid. And 6 years later, after your testosterone accelerates and rises significantly, you've grown a foot, you're chasing after girls, you've built muscle, you've, lost fat, you have a drive. And that's really entirely based on your testosterone levels.
Mhm.
And so if you're training someone who's in their 50s and 60s, and it's essential to check testosterone, and a lot of physicians will not check testosterone. I don't know why. It's crazy, because that's actually one of the things that you can actually do something about, right? You're checking potassium and sodium and chloride and liver function tests and all this kind of stuff. And 99 times out of 100, they're pretty normal and you don't do anything. Testosterone is actually one of those things that can be all over the map and has a dramatic effect on someone's health. It helps guys sleep better. It helps them build muscle. It helps them get rid of fat. It helps their libido. It helps their motivation, their drive, their mood. I have an expression, like people say, everything goes better with bacon.
Right.
Everything goes better with testosterone. There was a very famous study done, published in the New England Journal of Medicine in the 1990s, that showed muscle building in a control group, and then you built twice as much muscle if you went to the gym, but then you built twice as much muscle as that if you just took testosterone and didn't go to the gym. And you built 7 times as much muscle as the control if you went to the gym and your testosterone was high.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, if you're a trainer, I think of men, especially men over the age of 50, I think it's essential that a man gets free and total testosterone checked, and also estrogen, right? So men and women both have testosterone and estrogen. It's just different ratios.
Right.
And it's very easy for your body to convert testosterone into estrogen, because if you look at the molecular structure of testosterone and estrogen, the only difference is a single hydrogen atom. So it's very easy for your body to flip testosterone into estrogen. It's called aromatization. And a lot of aromatization occurs in fat. So if you have a patient who's fat, it's likely that their testosterone's low and their estrogen's high, which is why they get man boobs.
Wow. Oh my
So
gosh.
I'm fascinated by this. So, look, I think a lot of what we're talking about is similar with women too, in terms of, first of all, what should people be doing earlier in life to help slow this precipitous decline in testosterone? I think the answers are pretty obvious among the three of us, but in terms of just exercise, proper diet, remaining at a healthy weight, to your point, the excess body fat, sleep, huge. Stress can tank just about everything else, in terms of just, hey, I'm being chased by a bear all the time. I'm going to perhaps lower certain neurotransmitters and hormones and upregulate things like cortisol and adrenaline or whatever. I've heard sunlight as well, and vitamin D. And like, ideally, here's the thing though, I find most people don't buy prevention, right? They are only looking for help when like it's hit the fan. But so now you're down here, and let's say you're, 45 years old, and your testosterone was checked and you're at like 250, other than replacing it with shots. What does that then look like in terms of where a health coach can step in? We can't prescribe testosterone. We could probably provide resources with doctors like yourself that do, but where does a health coach step in? And I would love to speak to you in terms of kind of lifestyle, nutrition, and things where we can really help our clients dial things in.
Sure. So, one thing you can't recommend a medication, but you certainly can recommend to your client to ask their physician about getting them on testosterone replacement, or even just a testosterone supplement. Like I have a testosterone supplement called Support, which is DHEA, which is a testosterone precursor. It is Tonkat Ali, which binds sex hormone binding globulin, which increases free testosterone. It's got DIM, which prevents the aromatization of testosterone to estrogen. So, you can boost testosterone about 15%, but that's about all you can get from a testosterone supplement. And then, getting a guy into the gym to build muscle, to burn fat, to convince them to get more sleep, to convince them to eat more healthy. Testosterone is a steroid hormone, and steroid hormones are made out of cholesterol. So it's essential to have some form of cholesterol, whether it's meat or those kind of things. So there is definitely a dietary aspect. Like I have not a lot, but a fair number of patients who are vegans or strict vegetarians.
Mhm.
And I find unless they really know what they're doing, their testosterones are low.
Yeah, I bet it is. I love this. So yeah, recommend that they talk to their physician. That's such a great thing for a health coach to generally do. I mean, help your client advocate for themselves inside the medical system, right? That's really in the purview of a health coach. And then building muscle, burning fat, getting to sleep, eating better, boom. Like this is really in our wheelhouse.
Yeah. So in my book, The 21st Century Man, there's a chapter on basically how to work with your physician.
Awesome.
And even, if you don't want to buy the book, even though I think you should, if you go to the website, which is the 21stcenturyman.com, all written out in letters, I made a video on how to effectively work with your physician.
Awesome.
Because it's super important to actually learn how to advocate for yourself with your physician and understand that doctors these days only have 10 or 15 minutes for you. And if you go in there and talk about the weather and talk about, football, you've basically wasted your time and the time, the money that you spent going to the doctor. You need to be prepared. Like my attorney is $750 an hour. So I realized like every minute I'm in there, it costs me $1.
Right.
5 minutes is like a sandwich. Right. So I prepare everything before I go to see my attorney so that I don't waste a single second. And that's the way people, I think, should approach their physician. Go in there and say, I want to do the following, my cholesterol is high, so I want to be on a statin. I think my testosterone's low, so I want my testosterone checked, and I want a free and total testosterone checked and an estrogen checked. I want to make sure my vitamin D is okay. I want to make sure my vitamin B12 is okay. These are the things that I want to do. And can you please make sure that you do? And these are the questions that I have to answer, to ask you.
That's a great resource. That's an incredible resource. That's just a smart way of thinking through this unfortunate scourge, which is the 7-minute doctor's appointment. Like, okay, you got 7 minutes. You better use that time wisely. It's like script. Here's what to say. Here's what to literally ask for. That's such an awesome resource that, that I hope coaches who work with men will utilize. When I think through working with my clients, the topic of hormones comes up a lot. I feel like my female clients, for better or worse, will tell me it's my hormones. I don't know why. We're just very attuned, I guess, to hormones because for 35 years or so, we have the monthly gift of hormone fluctuations that we get to experience. I never hear men say that. I never hear men say, oh, it's my hormones. I just think they don't even clock that hormones are things that they have to pay attention to. I'm just curious, like what in a perfect scenario, very healthy ancestral man, whatever this is, what would testosterone normally do in our 50s and 60s? What's the normal?
Yeah, normal. I had a patient the other day where we were talking about normal testosterone for an 80-year-old, and he said, well, most of my 80-year-old friends are dead. Yeah, so and my approach to testosterone is a little bit not abnormal, but it sort of goes against what the standard urology textbook would say, which is, get someone into the normal range between 500 and 700. And that's what most of the testosterone preparations do, whether it's creams or oral form or nasal form or transrectal, like all these different forms of testosterone, subcutaneous, will get your testosterone into that 400 to 700 range. And you can live normally in that 400 to 700 range. But what I find, especially for men as they age, if they want to maintain or even build their muscle mass, you need testosterone levels between 1,000 and 1,400.
Okay.
And that's safe. It's not unsafe.
Yeah.
But in order to get there, you either need to use injection therapy or pellets.
Let me see.
I would love to dive into those because we talk about this all the time too, Erin, right? About the issues sometimes with conventional ranges and what's viewed as normal compared to optimal. And so here's, you've got someone who's aging, a man who's in his 50s and 60s, and maybe he's lucky enough to have his testosterone tested and it comes in at 500 or what have you, and his doctor's telling him it's normal. You're normal. Oh, look, it's all good. Meanwhile, he's like, I still feel like crap. I'm still too tired. How difficult is it in the conventional realm to have someone hear that, and how do you advocate for, I still feel terrible. So
yeah, I mean, I see a lot of men whose testosterone is 500 and they don't feel great. And it has to do with a lot of things. Maybe it's just not purely testosterone. Maybe it's how they're eating, or, the work stress, or how they're sleeping, or, a whole bunch of other things. But, for example, I see a lot of first responders, police, fire, SWAT, and these days, especially in California, those departments are underfunded or undermanned, and these guys are doing a lot of overtime. It's really horrible the way that a lot of people treat them, and a lot of their testosterones are not what they should be. And the thing is, like I was talking to one of my patients the other day who worked SWAT for SFPD, and his testosterone was like 400, 450, but he's chasing guys on the street and fighting with guys on the street whose testosterones are 1,000.
right.
And you're at a big disadvantage in that situation. And sometimes it's life or death. I mean, I was talking to one of my patients who's a executive protection person, and he's Muay Thai certified, whatever. And he was telling me about how he was in a fight with a guy with a knife, and he was like, I could have been killed. So when you're in that situation and your testosterone's only 400 or 500, that's not good. You got to get your testosterone up to 1,000 or 1,400. And this SWAT guy was telling me that, I have his testosterone around 1,200, 1,400. He's doing amazingly well. And he was at a crime scene, and there were two bad guys, and one went one way and one went the other way. And so he chased one guy, and his partner chased the other guy. And his partner, who wasn't my patient, didn't catch his guy. And my patient caught his guy, and he flipped the guy over. The guy looked at him and he's like, damn, you run fast for an old dude.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. This is blowing my mind. This is blowing my mind. Like the actual use case, this is gonna sound so unwoke. I'm sorry. But the actual use case for being able to do man stuff,
Right.
like fighting and chasing and being, on the SWAT team and in the military and, I guess hunting, right? Like this, again, that's sort of the ancestral role of the man. I know your book's the 21st century man. Let's not get too far into the weeds of cavemen here, but like.
No, I talk about cavemen a lot in that book. I mean, it's, cavemen is basically understanding what your basic physiology is.
Yeah.
We're made to be animals. Our physiology is of an animal. I mean, let's be real.
So I'm curious in terms of environmental factors and its role on hormones. And when you talk about seeing men who are obese carrying a lot of body fat, now they have too much estrogen. And so how much of this, do these hormones actually affect each other in terms of these interplay? So in terms of environmental factors that might actually be estrogenic, basically, right? Help the body. And how does that affect testosterone, or would they both be high? Would having too much estrogen actually cause your testosterone to go low? How does that mechanism work?
Let me tell you about my friend Carolyn. She's an athlete with a passion for health. She'd been health coaching friends, families, strangers, not even knowing it was a thing. She just felt called to help other people live their healthiest lives. Then she discovered the Primal Health Coach certification program, and she went from feeling like an imposter to belonging to an amazing community of like-minded health pros. Confident and finally able to enjoy a fulfilling and profitable career doing exactly what she loves. Carolyn is one of thousands of certified primal health coaches living their best lives and helping their clients do the same. The Primal Health Coach Institute offers a variety of health and fitness certifications and specializations. Our graduates are practicing unique coaching specialties and changing lives in countries all over the world. We're always growing and evolving, so come grow with us. Visit primalhealthcoach.com to check out our courses and offerings.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really an expert in terms of like plastics and environmental toxins and
Right.
those kind of things. I mean, the thing is like, I mean, clearly they're bad.
Right.
They're not good, but I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You can't just like isolate yourself. I mean, I guess you could move to a bubble in the middle of the Amazon or something like that. But I mean, if you want to live in society, you're going to be exposed to all the sorts of crap that we have floating around. And you know, like not everyone can eat organic food. I have a patient who's a large industrial farmer, and I was talking to him about this, and he said, you know, if you want everyone to eat organic, you're going to have to pick which 30% of the world is going to eat.
Yeah.
You know, there's like a reason for
Mhm.
pesticides and genetic modified foods and et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, you have to live in the world that we're in and deal with that. So, you know, for me, it's simple to live better than 95% of people, but it's difficult. I mean, like if you don't drink alcohol, if you don't smoke, if you don't do drugs, if you don't eat too much, you know, if you watch your cholesterol, if you get good sleep, if you work out every day, if you stretch, if you meditate, and if you're nice to other people, that covers about 90%, 95% of stuff.
It does. I'm grateful that you said
I
that.
mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, it's hard to do. We live in a very stressful world. It's a lot. But the thing is, like I had a patient that flew in from Florida to see me, and he's like asking me about peptides.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm on BP 157 and thymosin alpha 1, and like he rattled off all these expensive peptides he was on, and I just took a look at his InBody. I looked at him. I said, dude, you got to lose 50 pounds. Like, you know, why are you buying all these expensive peptides? Do the simple stuff of losing the weight first. You know, control what actually goes in your mouth. You know, that's one question I ask my patients fairly frequently is, do you control what goes into your mouth? You know, is there someone at home that's like prying open your mouth and shoving food and alcohol and other stuff in there? Or do you have complete control over what goes in your mouth? Oh yeah, well, okay, I know what you mean.
It's a great, it's so interesting. Like those biohacks, right? Like the number one hack would be the basics. The basics are the hack, and people are just skipping right over it for the next thing. That's really kind of the unfortunate. I feel like that's the unfortunate scourge of the modern wellness industry. Is there just are so many hacks, but the basics still work, and mercifully, the basics are in the realm of the health coach. But I love it.
But it's the motivation, and the motivation is for me is the analytics. You know, it's the body composition. It's, you know, you have bird legs, or, you know, you have no core strength, or, you know, you have as many pounds of muscle in your body, you have as many pounds of fat, right? So you have 80 pounds of muscle, 80 pounds of fat. Like, and people look at that and they're like, uh-oh, I can't escape from this. I tell patients, don't look at me, you know, look at the numbers.
Yeah.
I'm just reading the cards that are in front of you. That's it.
You know, I think so. Men are absolutely driven by data, a lot of men, but I have found a lot of women do too. Erin and I were together at the CrossFit Games one year, and InBody was there. I happened to own a CrossFit box at the time, and I was sold enough that we bought one for my box. And whether it was men or women, they were very driven by, like, at first trying to get on there. They're like, I'm afraid to get out. I'm afraid to get out. I'm afraid what it's going to tell me, you know, and then they see it and it's okay. Well, now we know. And we can start. And what it allowed me to do, especially for a lot of my women, was to take the focus off the scale and focus on building muscle and losing body weight and that visceral fat number. We've got the version that gave us the ability to break that down. But I'm also now working with patients using a CGM. And I will tell you, my clients will self-correct their own behavior when they see that number go up higher than they want to see it. And they're like, oh, I always thought bananas were healthy, Laura. Why is that? Why is the banana? There's a difference between healthy and in terms of just understanding really what that means versus how this food actually affects their body and what they're trying to accomplish. So I think data can motivate all people. I do agree with you, men in particular. I think women can be motivated by other things well, just as strongly. But
these are all generalizations, and I work almost exclusively with men. So, I can't really talk to women, but I mean, clearly that analytics work for everyone. I think as a general rule, women work more on sort of appearance, whereas guys work less on appearance. I mean, like I don't do it in the office, but I send people upstairs to do hydrofacials. I mean, hydrofacials are like the easiest, best, cheapest thing you could possibly do. And I have guys that are, run construction companies or ex-professional baseball players. And you can see like they get these big pores with like black in them. And I'm like, dude, just go upstairs. It's a couple $100, get a hydrofacial. You'll improve your appearance 5 years in a day. And you can't drag them up there. So it's like guys have this filter. They don't really see stuff, but I think women do, but they do respond to numbers. And I think I haven't really gotten into the CGM stuff, but I think it's great. I think it's wonderful because it gives people like, those step things. People want to do 10,000 steps in a day, and they say, "Oh, I only did 8,000 steps today." So it's those numbers that drive men. I won't speak to women. You guys have a much greater understanding of that than I do.
Yeah. Well, something that I think about is like what brings somebody in to the wellness world, right? Seeking a coach, seeking a doctor is typically how they feel, right? It's the symptomatology.
Well, I mean, for me, it's their penis.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
They just
their
pull them
penis.
in by their penises. when they think they're great until they can't get it up anymore, and then they realize, there's a problem that's going to affect my quality of life, and my wife's off at me, and it affects her quality of life, and so that's what brings him into my world.
Got you.
And you wouldn't be surprised if underneath everything in your world, that's what brings men in.
Okay.
Is because that's one of those things that leaves men before, like if you look at the data, guys will lose their nighttime erections, say in their 40s or whatever. And then 10 years later, they'll lose their on-demand erections. And then 10 years later, they'll have a heart attack.
Oh boy.
Right. So it's because it's circulation, right? And the arteries to the penis are 1 to 2 millimeters in their peripheral. The arteries to the heart are 3 to 4 millimeters in their central. So it's a 10-year lead time. And if you're getting someone who's overweight, who doesn't have good cardiovascular fitness, and they're coming in for training for physical reasons, I can almost guarantee you that down below things aren't working. They're just not telling you that, right? They're embarrassed, ashamed, whatever. But that goes with the territory.
Yeah. Well, so women, when they've got a good girlfriend, they talk about this stuff. When you've got a close group of friends and you've got that one or two girlfriends that you can really talk about this kind of stuff. Whereas I find with my husband, and so, I don't know how, he's like, girls are far worse. He used to be in hair, believe it or not. My husband's done a lot of things, and he actually has a cosmetology license, and he would be around all these. He's like, women are dirty. Like the kind of stuff they talk about. He's like, let's talk about that kind of stuff. Not the women think we do, but we don't. We might kind of talk in innuendo and jokes, but we don't really get into that. So I could totally see, how men not talking amongst themselves. Now, a guy finds himself in a situation that had he actually just gotten some help earlier, if he'd be willing to either A, admit it, B, talk about it, could really save him a lot of grief and health issues down the road. Is there a particular period of time or symptom? Is it that, hey, my nighttime erections are going away? Like, at what point do most men realize something's up?
Oh, when they've had fails in bed.
Okay.
Mhm.
But like the speaking of bringing, dragging guys in by their penis. I mean, that's how the 21st century man got to be 101 chapters. I started it out by writing a book about sexual medicine, but there are so many things that affect sexual function for men. I see it as like this big Maslow's pyramid. So like at the bottom is physical health, right? So if you don't have good physical health, if you're diabetic, if you have heart disease, if you if you can't sleep, if you smoke, if you do all those things, erectile function is not going to happen for you. And then there's the mental health realm, and then there's the emotional health realm, and then there's the relationship health, there's the aesthetic health, and at the very top is sexual health. It's different when you're 20s are a different era, but when you're 50 plus, all those things have to be going right for you in order for you to have a satisfying, physically intimate relationship. And so that's what the book has sections on aesthetic medicine. It has sections on relationships. It has sections on emotional health. It has sections on mental health. It has sections on physical fitness, on eating, on basically every aspect of men's health that is going to get you to the top of the pyramid. And it's hard. Life is not easy for the 21st century man. There's so many different things that men have to juggle to get to the top of that pyramid.
Yeah, there's a long way to go. I mean, gosh, I'm feeling for men. I'm feeling for men. Life is not easy for the 21st century man. But one thing that I think about is, so when a woman's in her, woman hits her 50s ish, she goes through menopause, and we kind of translate that to say, oh, well, I'm not fertile anymore. I'm no longer a fertile woman. So sexual reproduction is not a thing anymore. But is there like an andropause? You hear about this, but is there a certain point in a man's life where he's not supposed to be sexual anymore?
Well, we're not supposed to live more than 40 years anyway.
Okay.
Right. Like our ancestors didn't live more than 35, 40 years, and they died of an infection or diarrhea or getting eaten by a tiger.
Yeah.
And so, there's clearly a drop off for women called menopause. And that's another amazing chapter in the book is what men need to know about menopause.
Oh, I love that that's in there.
Yeah. I mean, like there are chapters in this book that I don't think have appeared in any men's health book ever.
Definitely not.
I mean, or men's magazines, right? How many men's magazines do you see that have a chapter on what men need to know about menopause? But it's essential, right? If you're in your mid 50s and your wife's or your female partner's in her mid 50s or early 50s, you better know about menopause because it can destroy your relationship, both emotional, mental, sexual. And if you don't know that, you're going to be in big trouble.
That's a fantastic point of view in terms of viewing hormone replacement therapy as almost something that really makes complete sense when viewed through that prism. That, okay, so human beings are now living past how our, really from not that long ago, right? I mean, it's less than 100 years, the life expectancy.
Yeah, I mean, if you compared how long humans have been around for to the increase in life expectancy, I mean, it's just like a little blip on the map. I mean, I think someone said there are more human beings alive today than have ever existed in the history of humanity. I don't know if that's true or not, but I mean, it could be.
It could be. Well, if you think about it, I was doing this statistic too, and looking through this when I was going through my own menopausal journey, which I'm still smack dab in the middle of. But, I forget the date, but it was not that long ago. It was well under 100 years ago. I want to say even just 50 or 60 years ago, the life expectancy was like, average life expectancy was like 58. And I'm like, I'm 52. I do not want to live the next, because now it's 70s, right? I do not want to live the next 20 years feeling like total garbage. So at this point now, this is what medical advancements is all about, and being able to remain as healthy and less of a burden on the medical system by taking some extra steps, because that's the other thing, right? As testosterone and estrogen falls, heart disease goes up, type 2 diabetes, all that stuff goes up. That, guess what? Now we got to pay for that. And there's a burden on the healthcare system and public health, and it makes sense to sort of even that out from that standpoint. And so that makes a ton of sense. And so when I'm thinking in terms of from the point of view of a health coach and all of these things that matter, first of all, this book is no doubt a phenomenal resource for anyone who thinks they're going to be working with men. And I would even say, if you are working predominantly with women, many of your women have men in their lives that are dealing with something similar. And they might say, hey, I'd like my husband to come see you. This is what's happened to me, where now I find myself working with more men. But this book would be fantastic for health coaches to just understand all these different layers and how to, because here's the thing with health coaching, it's about motivation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Understanding the motivation. And so the more we can sort of understand how we can help motivate men, whether it's through data or other ways of having these conversations to make the changes that are within our wheelhouse. One of which Erin said it, being an advocate for yourself at your doctor. You know, in this book, does it go through the right kind of tests to ask for and structuring that conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a chapter on how women can help their male partners.
Mm-hmm.
There's another amazing chapter on how to please a woman.
Oh,
right.
Mm-hmm.
Sexually, written by Susan Bratton. So I didn't write all the chapters, right? I know all the people that wrote the chapters, right? So I have ophthalmologists, I have orthopedic surgeons, I have urologists, I have andrologists, I have experts in yoga, experts in mindfulness, experts in relationships, psychologists, psychiatrists. I mean, like you name it. It's like each chapter is a full consultation.
Mm-hmm.
So what I can't stand are books that are like 400 pages, and then I read 400 pages, and at the end of 400 pages, I'm like, they could have just written 5 pages.
Yeah.
That's as much information as in this book could fit in 5 pages, and the rest of it's fluff. This book is 900 pages, and it's like, that's the least number of pages that it could have been crammed down into.
Yeah.
Just because that's sort of the way that I write. I write with very, very high information density in the active tense. It's written specifically for men and how men take in information.
Amazing. Well, I've got it back there on my table, and I'm going to give it to somebody that I know to read, especially now that I know that there's a special chapter in this.
Yeah, I mean, you got to go through those. You got to go. I mean, there's a chapter called "Stupid Things That Men Do to Get Themselves Injured," and written by it's written by a friend of mine. Yeah, no, it's written by a friend of mine, Malcolm Johnson, who's an ER doc, right? I mean, if you're doing great, and then you decide to put up the Christmas lights and fall off the roof and break your hip,
yeah,
you're done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot. Yeah. And there's specific reasons that happens, right? As you get older, your muscular strength is less, your balance isn't as good, your hearing's not as good, maybe your judgment's not as good, your flexibility is not as good, your tendons and ligaments kind of desiccate, so you're not as flexible, your reflexes aren't as quick because your nerves don't work as well. So unless you realize, like, this is all normal physiologic stuff that's going on, and I shouldn't be up on the roof anymore, because my balance isn't as good, my strength isn't as good, my flexibility isn't as good, and my eyesight's not as good, then you're going to fall off, you're going to break your hip, and you're in deep trouble because you don't heal as well as you used to.
Wow. Oh, I'm going to read this book. I just geek out on stuff like that, right? Like I'm assuming that you have a statistic on that, like,
it's all statistics.
Orders of magnitude have.
Like how many thousands of men fall off the roof each year putting up Christmas lights. So it's like, it's always like, well, it's not going to happen to me, but okay, it's happening to 3,000 or 4,000 guys a year. Like, that's someone.
Yep.
Yeah. Or how many men hurt themselves trying to do a backflip on a child's trampoline? Because that happened. I mean, goodness, he did not really hurt. But I'm like, really?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you have to understand the aging problem. Like I'm 56, right? And I used to love single track mountain biking, and I used to love running. And, I run on a treadmill now and I have a spinner bike, and it bums me out, but I've seen dozens of, colleagues and patients who have injured themselves, either mountain biking or road biking. And
Yeah.
I can't afford to do that.
Oh, I like this point of view. I like this point of view because it's like, it's an acceptance of the aging process. Like, hey, I'm in this era now. I'm in my stationary bike era. That's okay. It would be actually
Yeah.
irresponsible to be out there on the single track in
Yeah. I
some way.
mean, one of the first things that I show men in my consultations is a slide that looks at the world record for the 100-yard freestyle in swimming. Right. And between 20 and 60, the decline in times is not so substantial. But after the age of 60, the slope begins to increase. And after the age of 80, it really begins to accelerate. Right. And so it's like you could be a top athlete, training 3-4 hours a day, taking supplements, having a trainer, getting the right sleep, training properly. And after 60, your rate of decline is going to accelerate. It doesn't matter what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so you just have to be smarter.
Yeah. Like, don't get up on the roof. Don't go single track. But even things like, maybe barbell snatches are out of the,
Right.
like, off the menu now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have to know how to train a man over the age of 50 or 60, right? Like, what I do is I don't do anything where I can't do it at least 12 times.
Yeah.
So lighter weight, more
Mhm.
reps. And as soon as you start to feel like you're getting hurt, you stop right away.
Yeah.
You don't work through the pain.
My gosh, that's so smart. So I would love to know a little bit more about so the book that it dives into, and you were talking about this sort of the pyramid and the layers. You're talking about the physical sense in terms of what men could be doing. Do you have kind of written in here and some things maybe we can talk about in terms of, okay, so but before we go into some of these, whether it's testosterone shots or pellets, because I would like to kind of understand that a little bit better, and other supplements, baseline stuff first. Do you have like this hierarchy of first get this in line, the next step is going to be understanding what you now need in terms of the next step up, so food, movement, sleep, stress, all this other stuff, guidelines in there, and then at what point is it, what's the next step? Is it supplements, and then is it kind of like a testosterone replacement, and then some additional things? Is there an order of this kind of stuff, or does
Well, I mean, if your testosterone's low, significantly low, and you have clinical symptoms, you just need testosterone. But there are ways of replacing testosterone where it doesn't have to be forever, and you don't have to get any side effects or any of those kind of things. So, like, I use when I put my patients on testosterone, I use a selective estrogen receptor modulator, which blocks the negative feedback loop so that guys' testicles don't shrink. And I use an aromatase inhibitor to block the conversion of testosterone to estrogen. And so, then you can do it safely. And if someone gets to the point where they're building muscle and they have a lot of muscle and they're eating well and they've lost weight and they just say, listen, I don't want to be on testosterone at this point, then they can transition off of it. And it's a much more likely that they will have success with that.
So is that a thing? So if you are doing testosterone replacement, what is the downside? What is the risk then that the body, let's say you are a younger guy, maybe you're like early 40s or late 30s and your testosterone's low. If you continue to stay on that, does your body just, again, down regulates, it doesn't need it anymore because it's getting it exogenously? Is that
right? So you have
to
to be on a medication called clomiphene or
Okay.
enclomiphene or HCG, and that will maintain your testicular function. But if you're not on that, then I remember I took care of an ex-Raider, LA Raider, Oakland Raider, and it's 350 pounds of muscle, but his testicles were that big.
Boy.
Right?
Yeah.
So, once you get off testosterone, you're hosed.
Yeah. So you need to remain on it for life then, if that's the case, if you're not taking care of that.
Right. But I mean, for people that are interested, if you go on my website under media, I have a whole bunch of eBooks, free eBooks that there's one on all about testosterone. There's one on testosterone levels. So the different levels of testosterone. based on the different preparations. There's one on performance enhancing drugs. So if you want to understand testosterone and testosterone derivatives and dihydrotestosterone and DHT derivatives, like Tren, Deca, Winstrol, all those things. It explains what those things are, how they work. Then there's one on testosterone and how testosterone is good for heart health. There's one on testosterone supplements. There's one on how testosterone replacement is good for prevention of type 2 diabetes.
I love that. And because there's different delivery mechanisms. I heard you refer to them. There's creams, there's pellets, there's injections. Does it depend on the patient in terms of what delivery method is best? Do you have?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely not one size fits all. Depends on what levels you want to get to. It depends on the individual patient, what their goals are. But just real quick, the downsides of testosterone, especially in younger men, it affects their fertility. They can lose hair on their head.
Wow.
Those are the two main. That's not why I lost hair, but those are the two main things. It does cause some prostate growth, but it does not cause prostate cancer. It'll shrink your testicles, but not if you're on the appropriate medication. But it's a hormone. It's not a medication. If it's managed and done properly, it's super safe. It'll boost your hematocrit, your red blood cell count, but that can be easily managed.
And so if you, let's say those testicles do shrink, then even if you're like, well, I'm going to stay on testosterone the rest of my life. So what's the downside then if you're not taking care of that? You're just, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I have patients who are in their 70s and 80s and are like, I don't care how big my testicles are, and I'm going to be on this for the rest of my life. So no problem.
It's not like anyone's seeing them. They're not walking around.
Yeah.
Who cares? At least not maybe outside. This was so great though. Erin, anything you want to kind of ask him before we let him go? Because I know we have a hard stop.
No, this was incredibly fascinating. I apologize because I just was wowed the whole time and I learned a ton. I learned so much. I'm so grateful because I really feel dumb about men's health. There, I said it.
Yes. And this was long overdue. We could probably actually pick a chapter out of this book and take a deep dive one day in another episode. This was, I think, a really great overview. So do they just go to the 21stcenturyman.com? Where do they find you and kind of all your work?
Just go to the 21st Century Man, but written out all in letters, the 21stcenturyman.com. And you can order a book there. There's all sorts of resources, free resources there. You can go to Brandeis MD, BRANDEISMD.com. That's where the testosterone eBooks, and there's a whole bunch of other eBooks there. And then if you're interested in my supplement line, it's Affirm Science, AFFIRM Science.com. That's a good place to start.
That's awesome.
I have a YouTube channel where I have a lot of actually good videos because I do a lot of physician teaching and lecturing. And so I record some of that kind of stuff.
I love it. All right, health coaches, get to it. Start your homework. Thank you so much. This was fantastic.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.